Hello, everybody. Night Nation, we got ourselves another win to talk about, and my mic didn't was so excited it almost fell off the table. But welcome to another episode of Night Shift, the number one post game show at Black and Gold Banneret, all things UCF at SBNation.com. It's Jeremy Brener here, and tonight I'm filling in for Mr. Eric Lopez. We've got Bryson Turner coming up here in just a little bit, and we're going to be talking tonight's game, but mostly we're going to be talking about the Big 12, as that is the primary news of the week. The thing that's going to be most remembered about this week is the Big 12 announcement, and I've got Bryson Turner here to talk about it with me. Bryson, what's going on, brother? How do you feel about another night's victory?
I am feeling very good and optimistic because since we got to take a look at the second team tonight, that means we got to take a look at some of the players that could be taking over from people like Dylan Gabriel, Isaiah Bowser, Brandon Johnson, once they end up inevitably having to go whatever comes next in their life. And I am very optimistic. Got to see Mikey Keene, Joey Gatewood, Deontay Marks. I really hope he's okay. And Keaton Robinson's. And so I'm very optimistic about what we're going to get from the future of Night Nation from this game. And we also got to learn a bit about the defense. We got to see how they were doing, and they seem to settle in after a little while. They certainly put a kibosh on the Bethune-Cookman run game, so that ended up going very well. So I think that I have some cautious optimism after this game.
Yeah, so let's talk about the first team, though, because the first team got a good amount of run, but they also started off slow, like we saw last week. Obviously, the rain delay, once again, there were a lot of similarities between the Boise State game and the Bethune-Cookman game, but we get off to a pretty slow start. We allow a touchdown pretty early on in this game. It ends up being 7-7, and then UCF takes it from there. But Bryson, this is 2 weeks in a row we've seen the offense struggle out the gates. Is this concerning to you moving forward?
I think it is, and here's a stat for you that I have up here. So our time possession in this game, UCF had the ball for 31 minutes. Bethune-Cookman had it for 29 minutes. So keep that in mind. They both had the ball pretty much around the same amount of time. 2 minutes isn't that much, especially when it comes to this stat here. Bethune-Cookman had 86 tackles. We had 55. And then solo tackles, Bethune-Cookman had 46. We had 33. So Travis Williams said in a press conference earlier this week that they were doing tackling drills in practice. And while I think that did take to some defensive players, like Andrew Glukov was saying on Twitter about how Dylan Lester was doing a very great job tonight tackling, but for a lot of these defensive players, especially the secondary, I don't think it took very well. I think they have to do some more drills, and Travis Williams is going to have to figure out how to improve this secondary so that before they go against quarterbacks like Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, not every game's going to be against Bethune-Cookman. I think Louisville next Friday. We have a Friday night game coming up this week, and Bethune-Cookman's arguably, other than UConn and maybe actually, they're the third weakest team on our schedule. We got UConn and USF right ahead of them, but not every game. In fact, most of these games are not going to be as easy as this one was. Final score 63-14. And you said, Bryson, about how we got to see a lot of those second units, third units even. I think we saw 4 quarterbacks tonight at one point. So, I mean, what did you see about the reserves that you like the most? One guy in particular that you love, that you're excited about moving forward?
I would have to say Mikey Keene. I think that a lot of people were probably a little worried because obviously Dillon Gabriel is a junior, which means that after this year he has the opportunity to go to the NFL draft, which is a very possibility that could happen. And seeing Mikey Keene tonight makes me a little more soothed, I think is the right word, about the future of UCF at the quarterback position. Seeing Mikey Keene, my favorite play out of him was that touchdown pass to Jalen Robinson. To see Mikey Keene make that throw on the run, a Bethune-Cookman defender in his face, brought down after the throw, and then Jalen Robinson, who I have to shout out there, coming back for the ball and getting it into the end zone for the score. That was probably one of my favorite plays from the second team in this game, and makes me very happy that I think that the second team has really started to make a connection. And that's also why I'm very saddened to see Deontay Marks being hurt in this game, putting no pressure on his left leg when he was escorted off the field, because during those first few plays, it looked like Keene and Marks had a really good connection going. So, yeah, I really hope things are going to go well for him, as well as Matt Lee.
Yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer to that question, but I think we have to give Trillian Cole some flowers too. He had a pretty dynamic game. Once they took Isaiah Bowser out of the game, and once again, like Isaiah Bowser found the end zone 4 times tonight. I know that a lot of those were like goal line carries, but I mean, 4 touchdowns in a game is pretty impressive if you ask me. So, I mean, yeah. But getting a guy like Trillian Cole some run, he 11 carries, 78 yards, found the end zone once on the ground and then once in the air, 15-yard receiving touchdowns. That's 2 tutties from Coles tonight. Now, given the uncertainty behind the running back position, I mean, Isaiah Bowser is clearly your RB1 right now. I mean, in the summer when all these running backs were going down, when Bentavious Thompson went down, when Harvey went down, it was a lot of uncertainty surrounding that position. And Isaiah Bowser it emerged as that RB1 last week against Boise very, very clearly. And tonight, of course, Bowser's getting the goal line carries and he's capitalizing on them. So he is definitely moved into that RB1 even more. You put it in Sharpie, now you put it on it was in Sharpie last week. Now it's basically etched in stone that Isaiah Bowser's number 1. It's not going to be nobody else. But Trillian Coles, I think, made a very strong argument tonight for more carries moving forward. And I actually, like with Mikey Keene, I think Mikey Keene is going to be the starter next year. I don't see why Dillon Gabriel, if he continues to be on this path, would stay at UCF. I do think he's going to test the NFL waters, but Mikey Keene is your next man up, and he'll be there next year, 2022, 2023, maybe our first Big 12 quarterback, but Trillian Coles could be RB2 moving forward this season. I really like what he does. But speaking of Big 12, let's dive into this, because I know we were talking about, doing an episode last night about this, but officially yesterday it was announced. There was a press conference. The press conference is always what you need to hear, but when you hear an official announcement, but it is official, UCF is Big 12 bound. And we can talk about all the goodness and greatness that it comes out of it. But Bryson, what's one thing about joining the Big 12 that excites you most about the future of UCF athletics?
Money, 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 money.
You go, money.
Getting those larger conference shares than we would have gotten in the AAC, both just in terms of conference shares and through a new media rights deal, just huge in terms of UCF financially. Now, obviously, we're going to have prorated shares for the first few years, so it's going to take a little bit to get to the full number. But even prorated shares are still larger than what we'd be getting as a member of the American Athletic Conference. And I say this in Knights of the Round Table, and there's a question I wanted to ask you about with something that you said in that article about the game, that Terry Mohajir last month unveiled his plan for the football campus, and in the background of that, we also got a little preview of the football campus with the AAA soccer. And he mentioned in the press conference afterwards that those plans are part of the overall facility plan that includes moving the track, renovating the venue. And all that stuff, he said it impacted all sports too. All that stuff is going to require a lot of money. And so the influx of funds from joining the Big 12, I think could very much end up going towards projects like that. And so essentially, I'm very excited to see the UCF athletic facilities possibly improve, possibly expedited than we probably would have had if we stayed in the American with the shares that we get from that. But obviously, there's a lot of other things that UCF can put that money towards, and who knows what they could be, but the possibilities are endless, and that makes me really excited about what could be in store in the future for UCF.
Absolutely. And you look at the future plans that Mohajir has, and I think there was a quote that I don't exactly remember who it was from, but it was like Terry Mohajir has been 8 months as the AD for UCF, and he already has him in a Power 5 conference. And but I think I heard it was like he came to UCF with the bases loaded. And that kind of helped him out. And I think we would be doing a disservice by not mentioning the impact that Danny White has brought to get to this point, from George O'Leary to get to this point, from Scott Frost, from, in some ways, Josh Heupel, but clearly not as much as the others. But I mean, look, Josh Heupel did bring us to a New Year's Six Bowl. So I cannot discredit that. And I was at that. That is the one game I've been to in all of our, big, huge moments. That's probably the biggest game I've been to as just a person, or I was a reporter. I was there reporting from Arizona with Banneret a couple years ago. But yeah, and then, Mike says President Hitt, like, even though President Hitt had a sour note to the end of his presidency, a huge person that helped UCF get to this point. Thank you, Mike Doty, for that. But I think also you look at the I don't know if this was the question you were going to ask, but the exposure that UCF gets from being in a Power 5 conference is significantly higher than being in a Big 12 or in the American, or a Group of 5 conference, if you will. So I'm from Texas. If for those that don't know, but I'm from Texas.
Deep in the Big 12 country.
Is this the question you were alluding to?
No, it was not. It was about the Bethune-Cookman game. Go ahead.
Okay. But yeah, so no. Back in 2013, 2014, UCF is playing Baylor in the Fiesta Bowl. And at this point, I didn't know a whole lot about UCF. I was a sophomore in high school, but I knew Baylor because I'm from Texas. And Baylor had RG3 and was a Heisman and all of that. And Baylor was a big dog back, 7-8 years ago in college football. And UCF, most people call them Central Florida at the time, they were playing in this huge game. And I was like, Baylor's going to win. Like, absolutely. And then I look at the game, look at the score. UCF's winning this game. And I'm like, interesting. But that is the whole idea. It's athletics in some ways is just advertisement. It's a form of advertisement. And people, what's that?
The front porch of the university. I believe it was either Cartwright or Mohajir that referred to it as that. And I think I
100% agree with that. I mean, you look at, because that was what got me intrigued by UCF. It kept in the back of my head. I wasn't necessarily like researching and applying to UCF the day after they won the Fiesta Bowl, but it kept it in the back of my head. And then when it became time to apply for colleges, that's where I applied to, and I ended up making the voyage from Texas to Florida. But that's another thing too, is you're going to get a lot more exposure in that part of the country with half of your teams in Texas, a huge state for football. Like, you're going to be able to recruit within Texas even more. You're going to be able to recruit within Orlando even more, which is a huge idea in Gus Malzahn's entire scheme, is to recruit Orlando. He's going to be able to do that with Texas too. Ryan O'Keefe is from Texas. Jalen Robinson, I believe, is from Texas, if I'm not mistaken. Or he went to Oklahoma, but I'm not sure exactly where Jalen Robinson is from. I want to make sure I get this right because
one thing that this is just really funny, but one thing that kind of bothered me a teeny bit, like one of those like tiny inconveniences that bother you, is that the ESPN Plus broadcast, one of the announcers kept referring him as Jalen, and I'm like, no, it's pronounced Jalen.
Yeah. The thing is that's what happens when you play a game on Plus. But Jalen Robinson's from Fort Worth, Texas. Mike says it right here. GJ Kinney is going to get a lot of recruits from Texas. I mean, the thing UCF has like they have Orlando, they have in some ways Tampa. That's another thing too is a lot of these Tampa recruits, a lot of these Central Florida outside of Orlando recruits, where USF was fighting against the same recruits that UCF was. Now you're looking at, well, UCF is in a better conference. We're going to play better talent. That makes USF even worse. That puts them in a worse position than they were before because they are now losing to UCF in recruiting on a whole different level than they already are currently. I mean, UCF has the recency bias and the success and the more revered coach, but now you have to compete with Big 12 versus the American, and that's something that USF simply can't do with being in the American. Now, I do think down the line there is an opportunity for a team like USF to come into the Big 12 or a team like Tulsa to get into the Big 12. I don't think that's totally out of the question either. I know Mike says no more Tulsa. That's one of the benefits of leaving the American, but this is just the first stage of this expansion that is going to be taking place over the next several years, not just within the Big 12, but within all of college sports and within all of D1. So I think this is just the first step in a long journey. And to be honest, I think UCF is going bigger than the Big 12. I think that their end goal is the SEC.
Okay, well, hold on. Like, don't like slow your.
This is what I'm saying. Let me explain this. Let me explain this, right?
I get it.
I'll explain.
I know you're talking geography here, and I know that's what you're probably going to.
Geography is part of it,
and I get that, but I mean, we just joined the Big 12, man. Like,
why not go higher? Why not?
Yes, I do get that, but like,
it's not going to be like tomorrow that we're going to go to the SEC either. It's going to be because the SEC has plans to expand within the next 15, 20 years. If UCF can do their best within the Big 12, and they are going to be considered one of the best football schools within the Big 12 because they are taking the spot away from Oklahoma, who's dominated the Big 12 the last several years. And I mean, if you take Oklahoma away, Iowa State, is Iowa State like the best team in the Big 12? They just got their butts handed to them today by Iowa. Like, UCF is going to have a chance not only to just go to the Big 12, but to compete in the Big 12. And that will be seen very strongly upon other people. And I do think that it's the same reason why Texas and Oklahoma, they were doing fine in the Big 12. There's nothing wrong with the Big 12, but they still went to the SEC. The SEC is king. And it's only going to get worse before they look and they try to get like Clemson, before they try to get Florida State. They're going to try to monopolize the whole situation. That's what they did with Texas and Oklahoma. And it's why it was so quiet, because if anyone really caught word of it, they were going to try to nix it. They were going to try to shut it down, try to come up with all these loopholes that they could to try to forget about it. And the thing is, with UCF getting to the SEC is a 15, 20 year, probably will never happen. I'm willing to say that now, but
Mike Doty says that UCF is not going to unless the SEC goes NFLB.
UCF is not going to join the SEC unless the SEC. Well, they might at this point. That's basically what they are. But I'll say this though, 15 to 20. Like, I'm saying this is like a 15, 20 year plan if it ever happens, which is there's a very small chance that it happens, but 15 or 20 years ago, was there a legitimate thought that UCF would join the Big 12 someday? I don't think so. So let's take this momentum that we are building And let's go even further with it. Why not? At this point, that's kind of UCF's motto. It's their whole, it's their whole identity. It's like, why not us? Why can't we be the big bad dogs? Why can't we get our chance? And I do believe that is with this Texas Oklahoma move, with UCF moving, with BYU moving. I do think that is where this whole shenanigan could be going. So if in 20 years, Bryson, when I'm in my 40s, if I'm alive, like I don't even know if I'm going to see tomorrow. But if I'm here 20 years from now and we're in the SEC, I'll be the first one to be like, I told you so.
All right. Well, I will say this. I have a little bit of response to that, and it actually kind of ties into this other question from Mike Doty. How many years in the Big 12 will it take for the perception of UCF being a G5 team in a P5 league to go away? I think it's going to be after year one when we finish really well in the Big 12 in the first year, if we're good. Because let's face it, the Big 12 is a very top-heavy team. Oklahoma and Texas dominated the whole thing. Sometimes you get a good Kansas State team or Texas Tech team or Oklahoma.
Texas lost to Arkansas today.
Oh man, yeah, but that's how I said.
Texas is not back today. They're not back.
Yeah, they're not. No, I mean, heck, I don't think they're going to be even very good in the SEC. So I mean,
they lost to one of the worst teams in the SEC today. So
yeah,
I know what you wish for, UT.
But my point really is that I think that we're going to get is either one, the Big 12 is going to be debated as whether it's a Power 5 conference or not, because that's just the luck that UCF has, where they do something to address the criticisms from Power 5 fan bases, and then they move the goalposts, because of course they do, because Texas and Oklahoma lead like, oh, is the Big 12 really a Power 5 conference in football? So as Bob Bowlesby pointed out in the press conference, the Power 5 and aka the Autonomy 5 aren't really about that. It's more about a rules and governance thing. So the Big 12 is still a Power 5 conference, and I think that it's going to be something that the whole league is going to have to fight against going forward. So a healthy Big 12 will certainly be healthy for us going forward. But I mentioned these Power 5 fan bases. I don't want to become them, and I'm really worried that we will, because.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so if you look at how, for example, Terry Mohajir released a couple of videos this week talking about how the student section was a little too rowdy with the Boise State game. If you catch that,
I don't necessarily agree with that, but
and essentially what I'm worried about is the fan base has really gotten a lot of notoriety. The UCF Twitter mafia for being very vocal and essentially punching up. That's what us as a fan base has been about for a few years, punching up at the Power 5 teams that look down upon group of five teams, like they can't be as good as them. And basically what I'm worried about is a distinct possibility that we could become that. And I'm really scared that we will, because otherwise it's just going to prove those Power 5 fan bases right, essentially, because we've punched up for so long, and we need to make sure that we don't go back on what got us here, because if we do, then it's just going to prove the Power 5 fan bases that look down upon UCF, that say the 2017 national championship game, the national championship doesn't matter. It's just going to prove them right. And I don't want that to happen. I want to make sure that we still are an ally in making sure a group of 5 teams in the AAC that we are leaving behind that are able to get their fair shake. Get teams like Coastal Carolina, get their best shares. They're having a pretty good season right now. We fought.
Well, the thing with this in the fan base,
we don't lose that.
We're not. Look, UCF will always be an underdog. We're always going to be an underdog until we get Nick Saban to come here and coach. But like, that's never going to happen. So that's the thing, is UCF is always going to be an underdog. Even like the thing is, because we did everything we could. We won the national championship, and people still said it wasn't good enough. So they're like, join a better conference. Okay, we did. All right. Oh, but you're not in the SEC. Oh, it's a Power 4 now. No, look, UCF fans are some of the best in the world. I personally believe that UCF it's out of all the fan bases I'm a part of, and I'm saying this as a fan, and I'm not saying this as like an analyst or anything. The UCF fan base is the best fan base I'm a part of, because they care about, like, it's a sense of community that's so different from everything else. And I think that's what the beauty of college athletics is. There are communities that can be built in professional sports, but in college sports, it's a little bit more family oriented. The people that I've met through UCF and the people that I've connected with through UCF, like, that is a different bond than like anyone that supports like the Magic. Like, if you're in the Magic, I'm in the Magic. It's a different kind of. It's not necessarily better. It's not necessarily worse, but it's different. And I do think that if we join, the Big 12 and we become a Power 5 school, we're a Power 5 school at this point. It's not going to change that aspect of the fan base. And look, if we go in there and we, like, worst case scenario, we go 0-12, like, at least we got the money to build all these and to create a better thing. But the thing is, that's not going to happen, Bryson. It's not going to happen because Gus Malzahn will not let that happen. And the people that are here are not going to simply just let us fold. Terry Mohajir, that's the thing, is I don't think the Big 12 is the end goal. That's a big reason why. And I think that's why UCF is not going to just settle for the Big 12, because they want more than just the Big 12. They want more than just that Power 5 status. They want to be a national champion, and not one that, people are going to discredit. They want to be the national champions recognized by every single calculator and every single poll and every single computer that votes on the national champion. They want UCF
to win the national championship game. That's basically
that's what they want. And this moving to the Big 12, give them the opportunity to. So let's see what some other people have said. This is a good question from Jessica here. Do you think we join the Big 12 in 2023? I hope we do, and not in 2024. I think, Jessica, there's a chance. 2023, I think, is the likeliest of the three options. There's three options being 2024, 2023, and 2022 next season. I really do think there is a chance next season it happens.
I think that it is the most minimal possibility, and this is why. Bob Bowlesby has already confirmed that BYU is going to be joining July 1st, 2023. And I think that the objective is to get Cincy, Houston, and UCF into the Big 12 at the exact same time as BYU. And so I think the American has said that they are willing to negotiate to let them go sooner than 2024. And I think what that means is that
2023.
The goal that everyone's trying to get to is to have all four teams enter the conference in 2023. And what's more, I think that that's also the target date that for the Big 12's negotiations with Texas and Oklahoma. So that way we're not in this kind of lame duck period where Texas and Oklahoma are going to be playing with these new schools for a season or two. So I think that the Big 12 is probably going to be negotiating with Texas and Oklahoma so that way they leave for the SEC for the 2023 season. Eric Lopez has said this too. I think everybody is going to be where they want to be for the 2023 season. So keep an eye out for the American to probably make some moves to add some members to replace us by 2023, and any other conference realignment things that we are expecting. I would imagine that if anything happens now and in the next few months, then if that anything else happens, then the target date for when all this is going to switch is July 1st, 2023. Now, the Big 12 has said they're not ruling out expanding in the future, but I don't think that's something they're going to worry about right this second. And if that happens, I think it's going to be sooner than 2023, or not sooner, after 2023.
Yeah.
But if anything, but basically, I think the reverberations of Texas and Oklahoma leaving for the SEC, everything is going to pay off from that move. Everything that happened then and the consequences of it, everything is going to shake out by 2023. And I think that's the end goal that everybody has here.
Yeah, well, here Jessica says, I think earlier you play in the Big 12, the better. And I agree. Yeah, absolutely. And I think with UT and OU, they obviously look, the Big 12 does not want UT and OU to leave. That is majority of their revenue. It's like, I think it's like 40%. I forget what numbers were thrown out, but UT and OU leaving the Big 12 nearly killed the Big 12. They had to act so quickly to get 4 schools to replace these 2, because that's how much revenue these 2 schools provide, and it's still not going to match those 2 schools. So the Big 12 is going to send them away as late as they possibly can. But when you remember when UConn left the American last year, they sent them away. They're like, go, bye. Like, pay a little bit more and you can go. And I do think that the American, that could lead them to think maybe, I mean, look, UConn leaving is not as much of a loss as 3 schools leaving, 2 of them being your 2 best football schools, UCF and Cincy, and then you have Houston, who just went to the Final Four. So that is a very different scenario. But the sooner you play in the Big 12, the more likely of a chance you have to play Oklahoma.
Yeah,
and that is why you need to that's why I say 2022 cannot be ruled out yet. I do think there are a lot of moving parts, as you mentioned, to where it's going to be very difficult for all of this to happen. And look, I don't think, UCF, Cincy, and Houston are all in this together. I think the 3 of them will move or stay as one. I don't think it's going to be a scenario where one school goes and the other 2 stay, or 2 schools go and 1 stays. I do think that the 3 schools, Cincy, UCF, Houston, are going to all go together. But at the same time, look, Cincy's a top 10 team right now. Cincy is going to be probably close to the top 5 this week. And that's crazy to think that right now. But that only accentuates the need for Cincy to get to the Big 12 as well. And I think if you look, Terry Mohadra says he's open to all ideas, and I think it's very advantageous for Cincy to get to the Big 12 sooner, because then you get Cincy scheduled with Iowa State, then you get Cincy scheduled with Oklahoma, then and the thing is, Cincy might be a top 5 team right now, and they still probably won't make it to the college football playoff with a full season, even with a 1-loss Clemson, a 1-loss Ohio State. It's still, I mean, I'll see it when I believe it. I don't think Cincy makes it to the playoff this season if they go undefeated. Now, maybe they won't go undefeated. Maybe UCF gives them some trouble in a few weeks. But I do think that Cincy has a legitimate reason to get there as soon as possible, just like UCF does, and they might go and work on it. But this is something that we'll all just have to kind of wait and see. And we'll keep you guys posted at blackandgoldbanneret.com and also on Twitter at UCF_banneret. So be sure to stick around to those 2 links so that you get all things UCF from SBNation.com. Before we go, Bryson.
My response to that, though, you mentioned UConn. UConn wanted to leave. Texas and Oklahoma also want to leave.
UCF wants to leave.
Exactly.
They wouldn't have accepted the invitation.
Which is why it's going to happen. Which is why it's going to happen. Like, but the thing with the Big 12 and Texas and Oklahoma is that if the grant of rights thing, if they just went that way, they're going to leave after 2025. But Texas and Oklahoma don't want that. And so essentially, I think what's going to happen, like Big 12 wants them to stay longer because of the revenue purposes, like you said, but Texas and Oklahoma want to go to the SEC right away because to get more of the money over there. So you compromise and you leave after the 2020. You leave for the 2023 season. That way, the Big 12 gets a couple of more seasons of the Oklahoma-Texas money. And then Texas and Oklahoma are able to get out as soon as possible that they'll allow to by the law.
Mm-hmm.
Or by law.
All right, we've got Louisville on the schedule next on Friday. A big game against a Power 5 opponent, but one that UCF could be favored against. Louisville did not look very strong on Monday against Ole Miss. I haven't been following what they were up to this weekend today.
I do. They hosted Eastern Kentucky and they won 30-3.
Okay, so they're coming off of a win, but it's not going to be as easy when UCF comes into their house. First road game of the season. That should be interesting dynamic. But Bryson, what's one thing you're looking forward to on Friday? What's one key to this game? Just quick.
I'm going to say Malik Cunningham. With the way our defense has been playing, Malik Cunningham has the ability to take advantage of that. And I think that Malik Cunningham is Louisville's biggest asset right now. The only reason why they look so horrible against Ole Miss is that everything else around him is not very good. I respect Malik Cunningham. And I think that if our defense and our secondary doesn't shape up, then he's going to take advantage of it. Now, is it going to mean that Louisville, has a really good chance of winning in this game? No, because again, all of the areas around McCunningham are used some work, and Bethune-Cookman took advantage of our secondary not being very good, and we just beat the crap out of them. So but I think that the biggest thing that Louisville has right now is Malik Cunningham. And if there's going to be any reason that Louisville wins this game, it's going to be because of him.
I think the first half of the Louisville game against Ole Miss did a very good job containing him. And to be honest, I would simply copy paste whatever they did. It worked clearly. So I would look at that game, look at that film on Louisville, because they were able to keep him scoreless. Now, 24 points they allowed in the second half, but at that point, Ole Miss was on cruise control in that game. I'm trying to find the odds for Friday's game. If we can,
UCF is going to boat race UL.
Yeah, it's from Mike. Yeah, UCF. Like, it's going to be a game of a lot of speed. Should be very exciting. But I'm looking for these betting odds. I can't find them.
Hold on. While you're looking for those betting odds, Mike Doty actually has another question related to the Big 12 that I want to address really quickly. He asked, where do we think men's soccer lands? And I think, and that is a very valid question, Mike. The Big 12 does not sponsor men's soccer, which means that UCF is going to have to, become an associate member in another conference, just like a lot of other sports do with women's lacrosse, which I believe Florida is a member of the American in. So essentially, Terry Mohadra was asked this question by our very own Jeff Sharon during the press conference, and he said that he is hopeful that the American will let us stay in this regard. And considering that the UCF's departure from the American is looking pretty amiable, I would say, considering, how we've seen UConn leave and how Texas and Oklahoma left. So, so considering the amiable separation, I think it is a possibility that UCF, and also the fact that the American only has 6 programs, including UCF, in men's soccer. So the American might have an incentive to keep UCF around. The separation as a full member has been amiable, so there won't be any awkwardness or bad blood there. So it could be likely we stay in the American possibly. But if we don't, then yes, you said earlier, Conference USA does seem like a valid destination for that. For that, we have some history with them being the conference we were at before. We had the whole situation with the Big East and then the American Athletic Conference. So other than that, I don't really know. Mohajir did say that he did talk with head coach Scott Calabrese about this. So he is behind it, and it seems like he is up for whatever challenges might come from the UCF becoming a full member in a conference that doesn't sponsor his sport. So who knows? We're just gonna have to wait and see. But those are very valid possibilities for the fate of men's soccer, who had a very good game today against FGCU. I might add, Alessandro Campoy scored 4 goals. First time any men's soccer player scored more than 3 goals in one game since 1998.
That's the year I was born.
That's before I was born.
Before you were born. Oh, Jesus. But Bryson, thank you so much for coming on the show to talk UCF with me. Feel free to drop your Twitter down below and tell the listeners where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me at It's Bryson Turner on Twitter.
It's Bryson. I'm going to type it in the comments here so we can show it up there. So there you go. Is that it?
That is correct.
I don't want to send people to the wrong link.
Not a problem. That is the right one. You can see me tweet about all UCF sports. I will also be very active on Twitter tomorrow, where women's soccer is taking on North Carolina. Head coach Tiffany Roberts-Shahadic is facing off against her alma mater, number 17 ranked in the country versus number 2 ranked in the country. 1 p.m. It's on ESPN Plus. If you're a women's soccer fan, then this is definitely one of the biggest games of the season for UCF, and we're coming off of a 2-game winning streak, one of which was number 7 ranked Penn State. So
put that split screen, put on your favorite NFL game, and UCF women's soccer on the other. But you can follow me on Twitter at Jeremy Brener. That's JeremyBrener. You can follow the Banneret on Twitter at UCF_Banneret, and you can head to our website www.blackandgoldbanneret.com, home of all things UCF Knights on SBNation.com. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of The Night Shift, and we'll catch y'all next week. Take it easy, guys.
See ya.